Hello Space Engineers, Wellington6012 here and welcome to a Space Engineers tutorial series. Now there are a lot of really good tutorials out there already and I would encourage you to watch those. However, I've been thinking about doing this for a while and I feel like with the game continuing to receive updates, now is as good a time as any to put my spin on it and hopefully help new players who are coming into the game for the first time. As Space Engineers does have a little bit of a learning curve, and I think that a little bit of support at the start will go a long way. Okay, so we'll get straight into it and begin in the main menu screen, and we'll go into New Game. First of all, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the different worlds and scenarios available here. We will be coming back to the star system though, that'll be the one that we're using today. We've got these categories across the top, which, you know, looking at these categories that make sense. What's in them kind of doesn't, so I will be doing this out of order a little bit. I'll start off with original content. So these ones here, these are the older worlds and scenarios in the game. These first ones were when the planets were first added to the game, and these are still just a sandbox world, so there's no story to it. But you've just got a big space station that allows you to have an explore around the new planets. So that's all it was. It was just to show off the planets, essentially. So that's those ones. We'll just skip through these. And this Lone Survivor, this is, I think, the original sort of world, the original scenario, which just gives you a bit of a start. It's got everything that you need to get going. But yeah, it predates planets, it's only asteroids, so yeah, it's got everything you need to get going, and then you can just head off and do whatever you want. So instead of starting with nothing, you start with something. If we could just keep going to this one here, the first jump, this is a tutorial scenario, and I would actually suggest, if you're new to the game, doing this scenario. It's only short, and probably is a good way to introduce you to the controls and things like that. There is another one up here in story scenarios called Learning to Survive. This is also a tutorial, but I'd probably steer clear of this. I've actually done this with quite a bit of experience under my belt, and I struggled with it. Not through difficulty, just it's not clear sometimes what you need to do, so it can confuse you a little bit. So from a learning perspective, I'd probably avoid it. Just with these other scenarios, there's Lost Colony and also Frostbite. So these are story-based scenarios, quite linear. There's a little bit of building, but it's more explore, adventure type stuff. Yeah, I think the Frostbite one is actually broken at the moment. This Never Surrender one though, this is the first scenario that I played. And I would recommend this if you're new, just simply because it gives you a reason to do stuff. So you can start off wherever, get your resources, build your bases, build your ships, all that sort of carry on. Eventually you need to defend a space station, an outpost, but you've got all the time in the world to get ready for it. So again, it just gives you a reason to do stuff. And there's also community content, so on the workshop there's other scenarios. Some are quite involved. I've published a few myself, and sort of that's the main sort of theme that I do with my scenarios, is the scenario is just a reason to do stuff, a reason to build. But there are a few on there, some good, some bad, but yeah, there are some out there. And yeah, player versus player scenarios, so again, just multiplayer, arena type stuff. There is a race one as well. Back to the sandbox. So there's a few different ones in here. These are more recent. We've got Sparks of the Future and Pertum. They came with the DLCs, relevant to what you see here, Sparks of the Future, and that was, what was Pertum? Industrial Overhaul. And yeah, again, just stations to show off, like the planetary ones that I started with. No real story, just able to show off the new things that are in the game. Same with, I think, the Asteroid Armory. The star system is the one that we are going to be using, and this just gives you basically an empty world but got everything available to you, planets, all that sort of carry on. This one here, empty world, no planets, so that's the difference. So let's go into the customization. And what I'm going to do is just really cover off the things that are relevant now in creating the game, and also that you can, some of the things that you can only do when you're creating your world. Most of these options here, you can come back and change them later. So I'm going to skip through a lot of it, in fact most of it, but don't worry, I will come back to it when we come to its relevance during our playthrough. So what I mean by that is when we strike something that's relevant to one of these options, then I will come back and revisit this. If I was to go through the whole list now, it would just overwhelm you, and without that context, I think it would just confuse things. So we will come back to it, but I'll just focus on the important things when we're creating the world. So creative and survival, I'll talk a bit about that when we get into the world and show you the difference between the two. We'll have survival because we can turn on creative mode when we're in that world. Different modes for offline, online friends. So we're going to stick with offline, so not multiplayer. Mods, I'm not going to put any mods in at the moment. And I would really recommend that you, if you're learning Space Engineers, just stick with vanilla. Stay clear of the mods. There's plenty of time for mods. I would encourage you to use mods later on, but just learn the game in vanilla so you know what right looks like, and if something's not going right, is it because of a mod or is it because of the game? So learn the game in vanilla, add some mods later on. There are some that I'll probably add pretty quickly, some sort of quality of life ones that should be part of the base game. Again, you'll know what I mean when we cross that bridge, but just for now, I'll leave it empty. All these settings here, I'm pretty much just going to leave as is. I'll just talk about hostility, environment hostility. This relates to meteors crashing down on the planets and creating a big mess. They do just create a big mess, so yeah, I'll stay clear of that one. These two here, asteroid amount and encounter amount, the densities of them, these two you can only change in the game setup, so this option is not available to you later, although the encounters you can turn on and off. But if you want to set the density, then you can only do that at this stage. I'm just going to leave the asteroids for this playthrough at normal, that's absolutely fine, and the encounters will also just leave at normal is fine as well. So everything else here, I mean the view distance, I go with 30, depending on whether your computer's up to it or not, you could lower that or raise that. We'll come back to all these settings here, but I will just talk about the block limits. So block limits, if you're playing on a server in multiplayer, I believe the block limits are automatically applied to limit how much stuff you can build, so that the performance of the game remains. I switch it off in offline mode, okay? So then I can just build whatever I want until my computer catches fire, basically. So yeah, certainly, yeah, in online worlds, probably pays to have block limits. Offline, you don't necessarily need them. Everything else, I'm pretty much just going to leave as is, and we will come back to it when we strike something that's relevant to one of these options. So we will start, and we'll get into a new screen where we can choose where we're going to go. And here are our options. So we will be choosing the Earth-like planet, but I thought I'd just quickly go through and give you an idea of what to expect from these other ones. Triton is a good first option for a new player. It's nice and safe. It's not too difficult because the planet's not very big to get to space. So yeah, a good first option. Mars also, another good first option. No oxygen on this, so that is going to be a little bit of a challenge. But again, getting into space, lots of resources, so it's a pretty good way to start. Titan and the moon. So Titan is the moon that's around the alien planet, and the moon is the moon that's around the Earth-like planet. Europa is around the Mars planet. So all three moons, really, really easy to get into space. Why I say space, getting into space is a thing, is because there are resources that you can't get on the planets in space. There are also other hazards, but yeah, certainly getting into space is a thing that you need to consider. Both the moon and Titan have good resources on them. Europa is an ice moon, so there are resources, but just the lack of stone will make it a very challenging start. Pertum is a fantastic planet. It's real good fun. It's great for rovers. Because of the high gravity, it's not so good for flying ships, and getting off the planet is a real challenge. So yeah, good fun on the planet, hard to get off the planet, so that's a bit of a tricky one. The space pod, starting off in space with asteroids. This is probably one of the easier ones because of the pod itself. It sets you up with what you need to go. So you don't really have to, there's things that you won't have to do because you start off with such a good resource. Polar opposite is the spacesuit, so just starting in space with nothing, just your suit. And yeah, that's going to be a challenge because you're going to have to salvage, you're going to have to try and collect, you're going to have to trade, get things from places with practically nothing. So yeah, some real challenges with that one. But Earth-like and the Alien, both big planets. The Alien is a little bit more challenging because there's a little bit more gravity. But yeah, both awesome planets to start on because you just get to explore lots of resources and you're real good fun. So we will start on Earth-like. So let's respawn on there and we will spawn in our drop pod. Now the first, I'm not going to go through all the keys, all the shortcuts, but I will just mention a few. The first one I'm going to mention is pressing the V key, and that switches us between first person and third person view. And then if we hold the Alt key, we can change the view without changing where we are. So that's quite a useful one to know. I won't go through all the keys, but that's just one. And then if we come down, we've managed to land on something relatively level, which is good. Right, the other one is tab to turn your HUD on and off. There are two versions of HUD. There's off, there's on with sort of everything, and then there's kind of a minimized version, which there's not much difference between the two, but that's very useful to have. Right, let's jump out and we will talk about some key fundamentals of the game. So to start off with, I'm going to talk about this survival kit, and specifically it being a respawn point for my clone. So the survival kit does also produce stuff, we'll talk about that later, and it also can recharge the various things in my suit. We'll talk about that later. So just for now, the respawn point. So if anything untoward was to happen to my clone,
health low,
then I would end up respawning back at this survival kit. Or if there were multiple survival kits, generally where the nearest one is. So with that in mind, where we are at the moment in this new game, where I've respawned, where I've started the game, if I'm not really happy with it, I do sort of have the option at this stage, before I get too carried away, to basically have another go, have another crack at it. And how I can do that is I can turn off and disable this survival kit. Because if this survival kit isn't here to respawn at, then I'm going to respawn at the nearest survival kit, which there isn't another one. So I'm going to go back to that initial game menu. It's just quicker doing it this way than jumping out of the game, making a new game, repeating all the settings and going through that process. So we can sort of, at this stage, we can have another go at finding another random location if we don't like where we are. And this is a nice little valley, but the sun has already gone down, and I would suspect because of where we are on the planet, they will be quite short days and long nights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to access this survival kit, and to get into any control panel you press K, and that brings up the control panel. And the survival kit, I'm just going to turn it off. And now if my clone respawns, then because we don't have a survival kit available to us, we're going to go back to that initial main menu. So I'm going to press the backspace, and that's how I can respawn. So we'll go yes, and there's my clone sliding lifelessly off down the hill, and we're back in the same screen. I'm going to do the Earth-like drop pod again, and here we go. We are somewhere which looks a little bit nicer. Hopefully we land on some flat ground. We are 65 k's away according to that marker from where we were last time. And that suits me as a start. So we're looking pretty good here. So what I want to talk about now is the grid system and also voxels. So the grid system is the building system that Space Engineers uses, and the voxels is what planets and asteroids and things like that are made out of. So both of these things are very much foundational knowledge for everything we do in Space Engineers. So I just want to touch on it because we will be referring to grids and voxels right throughout the entire tutorial series. So first, I'm actually going to jump into creative mode because I think that will help me explain the different grids a little bit easier. So if you recall back when we set up this game, that being in creative mode was an option back then, but we can go into creative mode while we're in survival mode, and I will explain the differences in a moment. So first of all, if we go and we hit Alt and F10 at the same time, then that brings up our admin screen. There's a whole lot of things in here, but I'm just going to focus on the top one here, which is Enable Creative Tools. I'm going to click on that and escape out. And so now we can actually just put blocks anywhere. So there's different things. We've got our toolbar down below that we can load blocks into. Again, I will cover this off later on. I just wanted to explain what the grid was. So first of all, this is just an armor block, a very basic building block that we will use quite a lot of in Space Engineers. You can see that this respawn pod is mostly made out of these light armor blocks. So this one here that is in front of me is a large grid. So I can just place it down there. And this block is 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters by 2.5 meters. This respawn pod here is made up out of small grid. And if I put it next to there, then you can see the size difference. This one is 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter. So 5 of those will equal one side of that. So that's large grid and that is small grid. Now, both of these blocks are currently classed as ships because they can move. They are mobile grids. So the small grid we use to make small ships and small rovers. The large grid we can make large ships and large rovers, both of which will be mobile. The large grid we can also make stations and bases. Now it may be that those are mobile as well. We could have thrusters on them and they could be movable, but we can also make them as what we call static grids or station grids, and they are not mobile. There are advantages to station grids or static grids. One is that you can make them inside voxel. So for instance, I can put this inside a voxel, and now this is a station or a static grid. It cannot move. There are certain times where we need to have static grids, which we will go into more detail when it becomes relevant. The other thing is just an FYI for computer performance. A static grid that does not move uses less computer resources than a mobile grid. So if you've got some really large grids with lots and lots of blocks that are mobile, it may affect the performance of your game. And if you can convert them to a static grid, then that may help alleviate that performance. So yeah, static grid or station, mobile grid, large grid, small grid. The small grid can only be a mobile grid. You cannot put small grid into the ground. It's got a red line there, as you can see. So yeah, that's the sort of difference in grids at its most basic. If I press the number 4 to bring up the armor block that's in my toolbar, if I put it next to the small grid, it automatically goes to the small grid. If I put it next to this large grid, it automatically goes to the large grid. If I want to switch between the two, I can either press number 4 again, or I can press R, and that also switches between the different sizes. There are ways to connect them. We'll talk about that later, but just that's a very basic fundamental of the grid system. So I'm back in survival mode now, which is how we're really meant to play Space Engineers, and I'm just quickly going to talk about how we actually build onto a grid. So if I again go and get my armor block, I'll try and attach this to the grid, and I can't do it because I don't have any steel. So over on the right hand side is a list of components that I need to make this block, and for this block it is 1 steel plate. So where do I get steel plate? Most commonly I will make a steel plate. I will make it out of iron ingots. And where do I get those iron ingots from? Well, I refine them from iron ore. And where do I get that iron ore from? Well, I need to find some, and I need to dig it out of the ground, and I need to refine it. Initially in the start game, I can also use the survival kit to refine stone, and that will give me a little bit of iron as well. It's far less efficient, but in the start game, that's pretty much what we're going to have to do. So there is a production process to get resources in order to give you the materials to build these blocks and make these grids, to make these ships, to make these stations. And we're going to continue to build on that as we go through. Alternatively, I can actually salvage steel from either this grid, so I could grind this little slope block down and that would give me 1 steel, and then I could make my block. I could get it from this grid. I don't really want to do that right now. I could also get it from a derelict ship or vessel. There's not many down here on the planet at the moment, but certainly up in space that could be an option. So I can find it. I can salvage it. The other option is I could purchase it as well. So that'll be an option we can talk about later. Initially though, what we're going to do is we are going to refine it using stone. So there is a production process, and that's how survival mode works. I will just demonstrate so we can break down one of these blocks. I'll just, we'll just go for this one here. I think it'll be nice and simple. Sorry about the noise. And so we've ground it down. Now we have a steel that we can put in. And you can see that it's unfinished, so now we can weld that up. So that brings me on to a quality of life mod. Something that would be great if it was in the base game, but it's not, and pretty much 99% of people I think install this mod or something similar to it, and that is a mod called Sneaky Sounds, and that is by Splitsy. And that will change the volume of the tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind this down. And through the magic of television, that's with the mod installed. Alright, so I just want to finish off today by using the survival kit to process some stone into ingots and then into components. And then we'll build, I think, a cargo container on the back to give us some more storage. So this is just really going to be a quick overview. Not going to go into too much detail. We will certainly cover all these things off more in depth next time as we do some more stuff to this respawn pod. But just for today, let's start by digging some stone. So we'll grab our hand drill and I'll crouch down. So there's stone everywhere here, but if we just start next to the respawn pod, it's not too far away, we just press the left mouse button and that'll start drilling. You can see there's some stone starting to come out now. If I hold F, then that will pick up that stone, and I can continue to do that while I'm drilling. So this is a drill function or a mine function. There's not actually a lot of stone coming out of this grass because it just does not yield that much. If we want more stone, then we can, a higher yield, we can dig into rock. So there's some rock up there on those cliffs, or else we can get through the soil layer and get down to some bedrock. We can do that by pressing the right mouse button on the drill, and that will put it into a destroy mode. So you can see it's a lot quicker, it's a lot bigger hole that it's drilling. It doesn't produce any stone, so we are just destroying it. If I switch into this view, it'll probably make a little bit more sense. So there's our mine mode, so quite slow but produces stone. And then if we go into destroy mode, you can see it's a lot quicker, a lot bigger hole. So we've got through the grass, we're getting into the soil, And we must just about be down at the rock. Nearly. There it is there. Okay, so now we are down into the rock. So we can continue to do some mining now that we're down here. Picking up the rock as we go. And our inventory is filling up. You can see the line down the bottom. And then Suit Lady will tell us that we're full. Thank you, Suit Lady. And we'll go back and we'll put this into the inventory of the survival kit. So this is an access port. Again, inventory, conveyors, that sort of thing, I will go through in more depth next time. But just for now, this is a port that we can access inventory on a block. I'll press the I button to get into it. And there we have the survival kit. We can drag the stone over. There's how much I hold in my backpack, and there's how much room there is in the survival kit. So hence why there's more in my backpack than in the survival kit. Now we're going to click on the production tab. And we're going to click on the ingots. So this is where in a survival kit we can produce ingots. Later on we'll have an assembler which won't produce ingots. You'll need to use a refinery, but that's further down the track. So what we can do is just use our mouse button to produce one lot of ingots. If I hold the control key and press again, it does a quantity of 10. Shift will do 100, and control and shift will do 1,000. Of course, I don't have that much stone to actually process up to however much that's said, sort of over 100,000 litres, so I don't have enough stone to do that. But that's fine, it'll just keep processing, and we'll put the rest of that stone in. So I might just go get another couple of loads. Okay, so that's finished processing. Now I'm going to press G to get into the toolbar configuration menu. And this is where we can add blocks to be able to make them usable. There's only limited blocks available at the moment because we do have a thing called progression, which we'll talk about next time, where we need to unlock blocks. But just for now, the cargo containers we can get access to. So I'm going to drop that down into my toolbar. Then if we escape out of there, if I load one of these up, go through the scroll, the mouse wheel, and scroll through the options, we've got some small, medium, and large. I think I'm just going to go with the medium one. Now, in order to start that, I'm going to need at least one interior plate. So let's go back into the production, and we'll queue up, I think it was 20 interior plates and 10 construction components to start with. So let's just get those produced. In the meantime, I can just grab at least one of those out, and we can put our cargo container on the back there. So there are some shortcuts. There's a thing called Build Planner. Again, we'll talk about that in more depth next time, but I'm just going to go through the process manually just to explain it to start with. You can see the list of things that we need, components on the right hand side there, and there's it's hard to tell, but there's actually two lines there. There's a hack line and a functional line. So we only need to put in enough components to get it up to that functional line in order to be able to use this cargo container. Sometimes the functional line is way at the top, sometimes the functional line's further down. But we will today try and use all the components that we need to complete this. The hack we'll talk about next time. That's if somebody else owns it and you want to own it yourself. But yeah, that is generally in relation to those computer parts. But we'll grab the interior plates and the construction components and we'll put those in. So you can see it's welding up to the hack line, but we still need some more things. So we need 4 computers, so we'll do those. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and we needed 4 motors. So we'll try the computers first, and there you go. So we didn't actually need those motors or display or interior plates to be able to use this. Good practice though, especially for something this small, is probably to actually try and finish it off. So let's grab those motors, and the other thing was a display and 10 more interior plates. So we'll work through those, and then that I think will be us for today. As I said, I just really wanted to get some kind of foundational knowledge there that we can build on the next few episodes. There's lots to cover, and I don't really want to put too much in. I don't want to try and cram too much into one episode. And certainly my style of tuition is that rather than just showing the how, I like to also try and explain the why. So that's one of the things I like to do. But that is indeed where I will leave it today. Went through a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I missed, and there's still heaps to go through. So there's a lot more episodes to come, but that was a start. Next time we'll do some work on this respawn pod. We'll make it mobile because currently it's not mobile. We need to do some things to it. We can find a new base location and really start to expand. And yeah, continue through this tutorial series. Just a final thought, I talked about some of the keybinds. F1, that's got a list of all the keybinds there. There's also advanced controls as well, so yeah, that's quite useful. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below, or alternatively jump over onto my Discord channel. We've got an awesome small community over there, and all are very helpful, so yeah, it's a good place to catch up and talk about stuff. But that is it. So yeah, I hope you did enjoy today's episode and can join me again next time when we'll go through some more stuff. And until next time, as always, stay safe out there everybody, and have a good one.